Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Paladin. This is Carrion Bleed Hammers, and this is going to be my starter build for Season 3. I'm very excited for it. Before we go any further, the gameplay that you're watching is obviously being recorded here in Season 2, as Season 3 has not happened yet as of recording, and all gameplay was taken at Corruption 1000. Thank you very much. So, if you guys were around for the start of Season 2 and you were following my channel, you probably saw that I started with Bleed Hammers at the beginning of Season 2. I had a great time, pushed it to 1,000 plus corruption. Fantastic, beautiful. There's some new items coming in Season 3 called Primordial Uniques, and you might have caught it when I introduced the build. I called it Carrion Bleed Hammers, and you might be wondering why. Well, if you didn't hear, there's a new Primordial Unique coming to the game called Carrion of Creation. It should be popping up on screen real quick. Go ahead and pause it if you want to read what it does. I'm just going to show it there briefly. You guys have probably heard about this, so it should be going away now. Carrion of Creation, this thing is nuts. It converts your bleed, your time rot, your poison, your ignite, your time rot, your shock, not your chill, not your electrify, which I thought was kind of interesting. But you know, a lot of these ailments, not all of them, but a lot of these ailments, it converts all of them to bleed, and then on top of it, you get a massive amount of bleed chance already added to it. Even if you didn't count the conversion rate, just the huge amount of bleed chance you get with this thing is insane. On top of it, I don't know what it's going to look like, but you're going to be doing extra AoE damage based off the amount of bleed stacks on an enemy that you kill. So might be a little bit weaker against bosses simply because you're trying to kill the boss. This effect of corpse explosion, whatever thing is only going to work if you're killing enemies. So the bosses that have ads might be kind of insane. The Reign of Dragons timeline might be kind of interesting with all those little things. Explosions everywhere. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So why should you play Bleed Hammers? Why should you play Carrion Bleed Hammers? It is a great build that you could start at level 1 and level all the way up to level 100, and it's pretty smooth. Very little respecking, if any, depending on how you play it. And I find this to be one of the most comfortable builds to start any season, any league, solo character found. I think that this is got to be one of the best builds for it. It's very beginner friendly, and it has very few controversies, so to speak. But there is one. So before we go any further, I want to state this right now. Because this came out in Season 2. This build does have an issue with the hammers. They can despawn on walls. Not all walls, but certain walls, and especially in the hot Season 2 content, tombs and cemeteries. So especially when they're going around you in a big circle like that, especially if you do what I do, you have the hammers follow you around. You could accidentally lose a lot of your DPS to the wall. And I do find that's a bit unfortunate. I've played hammer builds a lot. I've kind of trained myself to kind of avoid walls, but especially in tombs and cemeteries, it's kind of tough at times. Sometimes you have like those narrow hallways, and you just have to grit your teeth, get out of there, use shield rush to reposition and find space. But I wanted to point that out before I go any further. That way, if you guys are only a couple minutes into the video and you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with it. Well, before you leave, I do have another option in the description. I have another setup for chain hammers, and I will demonstrate some of that gameplay here in a moment. And it's interesting. I personally don't really like it, but it could be passable, especially with high bleed chance. But for the most part, I recommend spiral hammers. And if that's interesting to you, there's two different planners down here in the description down below, and feel free to check them out. So with Carrion Bleed Hammers, I think this is going to be absolutely insane. I think the amount of bleed stacks we're going to be putting on the enemies is crazy. In the planner, it looks like we're going to be getting anywhere from 1,000 to 1,100% chance to apply bleed, which in last epoch means for every 100% chance to apply bleed, you get a guaranteed stack of bleed. So 1,100 means every time we hit, we apply 11 stacks of bleed. So, you know, the way the math works out, every 100 it's guaranteed. And then after that, if you have 101, you have 100% chance you apply 1 stack of bleed, and then you have a 1% chance to apply 2. Makes sense, right? Okay, so 1,100% chance. This could be insane. And I thought, man, this is going to make Abyssal Echoes even more interesting. There's no there's no cap on how many stacks of bleed you can apply to the enemy. But the counter does stop at 999. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to use that number to hit 999 really fast, use the Abyssal Echoes, and pop the enemy. So I think this build is going to be insane. If this has intrigued you, stick around. I'm going to go over the planners. I'm going to give a demonstration of what the gameplay looks like. And yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the game real quick. All right, guys, here we are in game. I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of how the build functions. I know I just showed all that gameplay, but you know, sometimes it kind of helps if I break down exactly what we're doing here. If you're interested in planners, loot filters, all that good stuff, available in the description down below. Thank you for watching this far. Possibly leave a like if you like what I'm doing here. So here we are at the training dummy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run up to the enemy. Here's my hammers. I'm currently spec'd into spiral hammers. And the gameplay for this and chain hammers is pretty simple, except the chain hammers is just, as you guys saw in the gameplay, it kind of goes out, hits a single target, and then kind of ricochets around and comes back. So this character right now currently has around 428% chance to apply bleed. And I'm using the spiral hammers because we get multiple different chances to apply. As you can tell, the counter is climbing up pretty quick. And this is just how I play it. I just apply bleed stacks and then I consume them. All right? Go, 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 consume. Go, 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 consume. You know, and I might not consume that many times in a row. I might want to let them flower out and fester and all that sort of stuff. But one thing I want to point out, do you see this little purple icon? This is called Abyssal Decay. So let's go ahead and take a look at Abyssal Echoes. Abyssal Echoes is in itself inherently a dot ability, and what it does is it applies something called Abyssal Decay. And normally when you use Abyssal Echoes and apply Abyssal Decay, you hit the enemy and you immediately do that dot damage all up front. That's kind of cool, right? Well, if you come down here, there's a node called Crumbling, and it allows your Abyssal Decay to cause the enemies to take increased damage over time from all sources. It doesn't say all sources, but increased damage over time with no caveat essentially means all sources. So when we hit the enemy, we reduce their, with Abyssal Echoes, we reduce their physical resistance by 10%. They take 24% increased damage over time, and then it just lingers around. So I make it last as long as possible with Abyssal Decay. So here's the idea. We run up to the enemy, hit them with the hammers, and pretty soon into the combat, hit them with the Abyssal Echoes. Now, for most enemies, they're already dead. But assuming that this is a boss, he's now, or she, now has that Abyssal Decay. So that's when you really try and hit him with as many bleed stacks as possible. And the moment that purple dot disappears, hit him again. And now you reset. They're taking that increased damage. When you're applying your bleed stacks, it disappears. You know, bam, do it again. Right? Because you know this is when you're going to be doing the most damage with that pop. You're going to be doing all that damage up front. Bam. And that's how you stay efficient with the way I play bleed hammers. I will also point out that maybe you don't like the Abyssal Echoes pop. Maybe you want a little bit more. I put this under the Chain Hammers planner, so you can mix and match what abilities you want to use, but there is shield throw. And essentially, you use the shield, you throw it out, it hits enemies, and you gain a buff called Colossus. And for 4 seconds, and it stacks up to 20 times, and you can gain up to 4 stacks of Colossus per hit, and each stack gives you 2% physical pin. So 2 times 20, that's 40. So you can get up to 40% physical pin out of this ability right here. So this can lead to a lot of extra damage. Let me show you the main comparison of what I currently have on my build here in Season 2 versus what we're going to be having in Season 3 with Carrion. I'm using Salt the Wound, which gives us a large amount of physical pin. We're going to be losing that, but I think it's going to be worth the trade-off with that huge amount of bleed chance. I feel like physical pin is pretty important when it comes to builds like this, but there comes a point when having a huge amount of bleed chance just kind of overrides the physical pin. So what we're going to end up doing, and you'll see, we'll go over it in the planners, but I'm going to advocate that you get physical pin in these areas. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the planners. All right, Editor Bike here. Real quick, before we go to the planners, we're going to take a look at the loot filter real quick. I set up this loot filter to be both a leveling loot filter as well as an in-game loot filter, but you might need to add stuff as you're playing. The way I got it set up is I have all the hide rules separated, so that way you can click them all off when you first start playing this build. If you're using this as a leveling build, I would recommend you check off everything. If you really want an early ignite weapon, early leveling bleed axe, early throw rings, that sort of stuff, click on these. Otherwise, just leave it all off. That's what I typically do when I'm playing. I just leave it all off and I let my eyes be the loot filter. This really becomes handy when you get to monoliths, or possibly when we get to chapter 10, now that they've added a new chapter here in season 3. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually just going to play through the full campaign before going to monolith. So I don't really know what to expect in chapter 10 and the difficulty that it brings. So it's going to be up to you guys when to use this loot filter to the fullest, but I would recommend checking off all the rules. One thing I will point out, happening in season 3, they are adding some new rules for the loot filter, particularly in the form of sounds and beams and all that cool stuff. I don't have any of that on here because this is still season 2. So if I do make any substantial updates to the loot filter, I will post it in the pinned comment, but most likely I will post it when I will post it in the new build. So, well, not the new build. As you guys know, this is my starter. So I'm going to be playing this build, and then I'm going to release a video with my thoughts and a build guide, assuming I want to give it out there. And what I mean by that is I think it's worthy of your guys' time to try out this build. Considering the results I'm getting out of season 2 and the fact that this build's not changing at all, like the way the current form of this build, if I made no changes to this, I know I could already do 1,000 corruption. So adding in Carrion, I'm pretty sure I can do even more corruption. I think I'm going to be posting it. So yeah, be on the lookout in case I make any changes. But for the most part, this is what I recommend. Learn the loot filter. There's a loot filter guide down below if you don't really know what's going on. That way you can add your own rules and look for what you need as you go along. All right, let's get to the planners. All right, here we are. This you'll have to excuse the ads. Sorry, we're on Last Epoch tools. So here we are with the planners. So this right now is the spiral hammer planner, and let me show you the spiral hammer planner and the chain hammer planners. They're gonna have the same gear. The only difference is gonna be the skill matchup. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got here. I recommend a Leonine's helm. And I recommend you get physical pin with bleed. There's a couple different stats you can get on here. I recommend strength and physical pin with bleed. You could take Let me show this. You could take chance to inflict bleed if wielding an axe. The thing is, we're going to be getting so much bleed chance from Carrion of Creation that I don't think it's necessary. So I say go for physical pin with bleed, get your health, get your strength, and then if you got enough, you can seal a physical bin, physical damage, and increase bleed duration on both your helmet and your chest piece. I recommend a Champion's Regalia and a Leonine's just for the reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes and the dot mitigation. When it comes to axe, Dragon Bow and axe is still best in slot. Since we're going to be converting our Ignite and Shock chance and all that good stuff, I recommend you get T7 Bleed and then T5 Ignite. You could try and seal some Shock chance on here, but I feel like we already got so much bleed chance with this current setup. So what I recommend is you just seal a tier 1 chance to chill, and that's going to be a nice defensive mechanic. We don't convert it with Carrion, right? So with the chance to apply chill on hit, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. The chance to apply chill on hit, it is a defensive mechanic. It slows the movement speed as well as the attack speed of the target, stacks up to 3 times. We're also, since we're not running Salt the Wound, I recommend that you take physical damage and damage over time instead of critical strike multiplier. All right, the belt, I know it caught a little bit of a nerf, but I still recommend Brewmaster's Buckle. Cleanse and health is what I recommend. Also, you can kind of time the maximum health gain as endurance threshold for 4 seconds when you use a potion. Essentially, we have a node right here that gives us increased bleed duration per 20 endurance threshold. So the more endurance threshold we have, the more bleed duration we get. So we get 10% max health gain as endurance threshold for 4 seconds when we drink a potion. So when we drink a potion, we get that little bit of endurance threshold, a good defensive mechanic as well, but also we get a little bit more bleed duration. More bleed duration means more damage will be added to our pop. It's not huge, it's not massive, but it's still, you can use this in conjunction with your Abyssal Echo pop right there. You do the pop, you drink a potion, you apply that, do the pop, drink a potion. You could do that. That's like ultra mid-max power gamer fantasy, but I just wanted to throw it out there that you could do that. Also, you get endurance, vitality, a lot of good stuff from the Brewmaster's Buckle. Highly recommend it. For the reins, these are just defensive options. I recommend you get block chance and block effectiveness. And then you get an ivory and a gold ring because they have good resistances base. And yeah, you go from there. Try and seal a throwing damage minus mana cost on each of these rings. That is very important. I highly recommend you do that, and then you can get some throwing attack speed. Majasa's shield caught a bit of a nerf, but it is still going to be probably best in slot. The petrify part, the kind of OP part of Majasa's did not get nerfed. So we're still going to have a 20% chance to petrify enemies for 2 seconds. I still recommend Nihilist. Instead of critical strike multiplier, we're going for health on this one because we're using Carrion. Valdir, same thing. I recommend health. Even though this got nerfed, still best in slot. Blood of the Exile. Nothing about the bleed mechanics on this boot got nerfed. So only the strength, dexterity, and intelligence. That's fine. Still highly recommend Blood of the Exile. Great pair of boots. Lots of movement speed. Insane amounts of bleed duration. Let's talk about Carrion. We already went over it a little bit, so I'm not going to stay here too long. Their Eternal Gauntlets base, I really like that. Really like that. That's my favorite base. So you get armor. You get... Interesting. I just noticed something. Eternal Gauntlets are normally requiring level 86. But Carrion of Creation, which is Eternal Gauntlet's base, requires level 81. Interesting. I never noticed that. Let me check real quick to make sure that I sound just as smart as I think I am for that instance. Yes, I'm definitely not trying to waste. Yes, requires level 86. Okay. So that's interesting. You get to kind of cheese the game a little bit if you use these pair of gloves. So we already kind of went over it with the whole you kill enemies, you deal damage potentially to enemies around you, and they gain X number of damage per stack of bleed that was on the target. There is a cap on it. I don't know how effective that's going to be. I'm not really counting that as something to look forward to. Anyway, here's the thing about Carrion of Creation. We don't know what it's going to take to try and get a pair of these gloves. We don't know if they're a drop or if they're or you just buy it from the dude. EHG has said that there's going to be some primordial uniques that are drop only, and then there's going to be some that are that you can buy. There's going to be two different camps. You can buy them with currency, or you can find them as a drop. I don't know what Carrion of Creation is going to be, so hopefully I can find a pair of these pretty quick. If not, I recommend Assault the Wounds or even just a good old-fashioned Eternal Gauntlets. All right, and then as for the idols, just the bleed duration, physical damage, block effectiveness, smite. We use an unspec'd shield rush as we're moving around because we're spec'ing the hammer throw, holy aura, symbols of hope, abyssal echoes, and smite. As for the blessings, here they are. Be sure to grab the ignite, bleed, and there's going to be a shock chance one right here. Grab all three of these. If you can get these to 100%, you just got 300% chance to bleed thanks to the conversion from Carrion of Creation. Okay, this was the planner for spiral hammers. Let's go over the chain hammers right now, and then we'll get out of here. All right, here we are with the chain hammer planner. Not much has changed. It is still the same gear. It is still the same setup. It's just this is the chain hammer. So basically, we throw out one hammer. If there's nearby enemies, they'll go out and hit them. But for the most part, we just keep throwing one hammer. Now, we throw them really fast, and there might be a steady stream of hammers going out, but we don't create a spiral, and the hammers do not pierce. They just go out, hit an enemy, attempt to ricochet. If not, they disappear. So you don't have to worry about the walls because they don't come back. So we got nothing to worry about there. We're not counting on that. We do gain extra damage as a result of this, right? We gain extra damage that you get using the avatar of the spire, essentially this note ricochet. We get additional chain, so we can chain up to three hits with one throw. And since we can't throw multiple projectiles, we gain extra damage per extra projectile we would have thrown had we had the ability to throw extra projectiles. So if you're familiar with the Nova, everything kind of goes out in a star shape around you. Well, we're now just throwing one hammer, but they're counting the extra projectiles you would have gotten. So it makes each of those hammers deal even more damage. And since this is generic more damage, this also applies to the bleed chance. So there is going to be more damage with the chain hammers per hammer, but I don't think it's gonna outweigh what we would have gotten with Iron Spiral. I don't think it is at all. But nonetheless, I wanted to put an option out here for people who want to play a hammer build, but they don't like the spiral. I know you guys are out here, and I'm sympathetic to that, so give this a shot. Tell me what you think. Now, I'm not saying, with the shield throw, I'm not saying take the shield throw over Abyssal Echoes if you're playing chain hammers. I just threw this on here since this was like an alternative planner, so what you can do is mix and match what you actually want, and you can play that way. So with the shield throw, the main thing you're going for is the Colossus. You're trying to stack up this buff. It lasts for 4 seconds, and you can have up to 20 stacks at a time. You do 2% more, 2% physical pin per stack. You also gain some armor. So 2 times 20, that is 40% physical pin per stack. I think that's fine. I think that's acceptable. You just got to be sure that you're throwing out the shield throw as well. Same deal here. It will have a cooldown, unlike the hammers. It'll have a 6-second cooldown, but you also gain frenzy when the shield throw hits somebody. That's pretty nice. We also made it to where it can ricochet. I went and grabbed all the little ricochet nodes. So every time it hits an enemy and ricochets, we gain stacks of the Colossus. In this case, we're going to gain 4 stacks of the Colossus per ricochet. Last 4 seconds, 6-second cooldown, but we get all these buffs. So the idea is throw it out there, get all that stuff. It can also ricochet off of yourself. So you get the steel defense condition, gives you it's a buff that lasts 6 seconds, and you get 300 armor with it. Not too bad. I actually personally haven't played with the shield throw. I know others have to great success. So I threw it on here. You guys can check it out. Tell me what you think. I personally am going to be going spirals and abyssal echoes. So with all that being said, guys, we've already gone over the loot filter. We've gone over the planners. This is what I'm going to be starting in season 3. And then I will release a video probably a couple weeks into the season showcasing what I have done so far that season. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. And if you like what I do here, leave a like, possibly subscribe to stay updated if you are interested in Carrion bleed hammers here in season 3. Anyway, you guys take care. Peace out.